The first crack came when the old woman's hands began to shake so violently that the spoon clattered against the diner plate, and the man across from her, polished suit, unblinking confidence, felt something inside his chest split open without warning. In that instant, under the bright midday sun flooding the restaurant windows, a lifetime of power meant nothing, and a truth he had outrun for years was about to collide with him. The diner smelled of toasted bread and fresh coffee, a warm refuge glowing with late-morning light. Chrome edges gleamed, white and black tiles stretched into the distance, and the quiet hum of ordinary lives filled every corner. At the center of it all moved a young waitress with a red apron, steady hands balancing trays, her eyes alert yet kind, as if she carried more than orders. This was Maribel Quince, 26, who had learned early how to disappear into service while holding other people together. She had grown up in foster homes that taught her silence was survival, and kindness, when offered, must be rationed like water in a drought. The diner was her daylight world, where she could pretend the past didn't echo. At booth 7 sat Eloan Hale, 79, her silver hair pinned neatly, posture careful, dignity intact despite the tremor in her fingers. She had once been a school librarian who believed books could save children from becoming lost. Now she lived in a nursing home on the edge of town, a place with clean hallways and lonely afternoons. Across from her sat her son, Rowan Hale, the CEO of a logistics empire whose glass headquarters pierced the city skyline. Rowan's life was built on efficiency and control. His childhood memories were of a mother always busy, always shelving, always tired. He had grown successful running from the fear that slowing down would expose something hollow in him. When Eloan finally looked at him, her eyes were wet but resolute, and she leaned forward as if the weight of what she carried had become unbearable. She began to explain, slowly, carefully, that the waitress who just refilled her coffee was the same young woman who had cared for her during the darkest months at the nursing home, the one who stayed after shifts ended, who brought soup when budgets ran dry, who listened when nights stretched too long. The words landed without punctuation, rolling through Rowan like a low thunder. If you believe in hope, compassion, and second chances, this is the moment where Kindness Diaries asks you to like, comment, share, and subscribe, because stories like this live or die by what we choose to lift up together. Rowan's gaze followed the waitress instinctively, trying to reconcile the immaculate rhythm of her work with the image forming in his mind. He had toured the nursing home once, years ago, cutting the ribbon for a wing his company sponsored, shaking hands beneath fluorescent lights before leaving early for a meeting. He never saw the long afternoons, the understaffed weekends, the quiet despair. Eloan had not complained. She had learned long ago that asking for more often led to less. Her pride had kept her silent, and his ambition had given him permission not to look back. Maribel moved past their booth again, sunlight catching the fine scars on her hands, burns from kitchen mishaps, marks of a life lived in service. In her mind, the nursing home still lived vividly, the antiseptic smell, the echoing halls, the residents whose families stopped visiting. She remembered Eloan as the woman who asked about her day, who taught her a breathing exercise for panic, who pressed a folded note into her palm once, thanking her for treating an old life as if it still mattered. Maribel had taken the job at the nursing home during a desperate stretch when diner tips weren't enough. She never told anyone because humility was a habit she couldn't break. As the midday crowd ebbed, the air grew quieter, and Rowan felt the unease settle into something heavier. Eloan continued, her voice steadying as if relieved to finally unburden herself. She described nights when pain woke her, when fear of being forgotten pressed against her ribs, and how Maribel would sit beside her bed during breaks, reading aloud from worn paperbacks, sharing stories of a childhood stitched together from fragments. Eloan admitted that there were days she wished her son would call, and nights she forgave him anyway. Rowan's internal architecture, built of metrics, quarterly reports, and decisive wins, began to crumble. He had prided himself on philanthropy, on writing checks that made headlines, yet here was proof that his wealth had insulated him from the simplest acts of care. The revelation devastated him not because it accused him, but because it illuminated how easily he had chosen distance. He realized that while he had been optimizing routes and reducing costs, someone else had been sitting with his mother, holding her hand through the slow hours of decline. The diner's windows framed a city alive with lunchtime traffic, delivery trucks bearing his company's logo gliding past. Each one felt like a reminder of what he had prioritized. His chest tightened, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel small. Eloane reached for her water, hands steadier now, as if telling the truth had returned some strength to her. The waitress, unaware of the storm she had stirred, paused nearby, checking a receipt, her expression focused, grounded. Maribel sensed the shift before she understood it. Years of watching people had taught her when a room changed temperature. She glanced toward booth 7 and saw Rowan's posture slacken, his eyes damp, his gaze fixed on his mother with a mixture of awe and regret. She remembered Eloane's son only as a photograph on a bedside table, a smiling man in a suit. She never expected to meet him, least of all like this. The afternoon light softened, and the diner seemed to hold its breath. Rowan replayed his last visit to the nursing home, the way he had kissed his mother's cheek and promised to come back soon, the promise dissolving into a calendar crowded with obligations. The devastation took shape as a question he could not escape: what kind of success required strangers to do the loving he had deferred? Eloane, seeing the reckoning on her son's face, felt a complicated peace. She had not spoken to wound him, she spoke to tell the truth before time took the chance away. Her life had been a series of quiet choices, and this one, sharing Maribel's kindness, felt like a final act of faith in the goodness she believed still existed in him. As Maribel approached to clear plates, Rowan stood abruptly, knocking his knee against the table, the movement awkward and human. The daylight caught his face, stripped of polish. He looked at the waitress with a gratitude too big for words, recognizing in her the person he had failed to be present as. In that recognition, something softened. He felt the urge to change not as strategy but as necessity. Please drop a comment right now and tell us what this moment stirred in you. Sometimes sharing a feeling is the first step toward healing. The story did not resolve with instant redemption, it unfolded like real life does, slowly. Rowan began visiting the nursing home weekly, not as a benefactor but as a son. He learned his mother's routines, listened to stories he had never had patience for before, and watched how Maribel moved through the ward on her days off, still stopping by with groceries or borrowed books. He funded staffing increases quietly, without press releases, because he had learned that true repair did not need applause. Maribel, for her part, felt seen in a way that unsettled and warmed her. She had never sought recognition, her past had taught her that attention could vanish. Yet Rowan's actions, consistent, unpublicized, helped her believe that kindness could ripple upward, not just trickle down. She enrolled in evening classes, something Eloane had encouraged, daring to imagine a future not defined solely by service but by choice. As seasons shifted, the diner remained a constant, bathed in different qualities of light, witness to ordinary miracles. Eloane's health waned gently, her days brightened by the presence of both her son and the young woman she had come to love like family. Rowan learned that leadership could be measured not only by profits but by presence, by the willingness to sit through discomfort and listen. If this story touched your heart, please support it. Your engagement helps keep these moments of humanity alive and shared. In the final afternoon they spent together at the diner, sunlight poured through the windows in long, golden bands. Eloane watched Maribel move between tables, confident now, and saw Rowan follow her with eyes no longer clouded by urgency. The devastation that once threatened to hollow him had transformed into a quiet resolve. In that shared space, amid clinking dishes and murmured conversations, 3 lives intersected to prove that care given in obscurity can remake even the most fortified hearts. The world outside continued at its relentless pace, but inside that diner, time slowed just enough for grace to do its work, leaving behind a simple, enduring truth: we are saved, again and again, by the kindness we choose to notice.